So about 3 weeks ago, we had a speaker planned to come today, and at the last minute, that person couldn't make it. So when you're 3 weeks away from your event and you don't have a speaker, it's panic time. So I had brunch with a very good friend of mine, and I said, I need a speaker. And she said, okay, what are you looking for? And I said, I need, we usually don't have a lot of women come and speak to us. And when we look at the list of the 100 top Latino influencers in the United States, 95 of them are men. Not that I have anything against men at all, but I want women to rise up to the top and come tell us what their experience is as being a Latina woman in the United States. And so, my friend, Johanna Marcela Pinilla, I'm telling you her name because if this doesn't go well, it's her fault. But anyway, so Johanna Marcela said, I heard this amazing woman speak at an event a year ago, and she is dynamic, and she's strong, and she's courageous, and she's kick-ass, sorry Latino chicos, and she is an entrepreneur and an artist and a business owner, and she happened to grow up here in the state of Tennessee. So please, help me welcome my new friend, an amazing woman, Milcho.
Thank you for that. So if this goes wrong, it's your fault, okay? Thank you guys, I'm so excited to be here. I actually started my speech with saying, good morning, beautiful ladies, but there's a lot of really handsome men here, so hello to everybody. Thank you for being here. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the TLACC for inviting me, and of course, Marcela Gomez, who's sitting over there a little nervous because she doesn't know what's about to happen. So it's an honor to be your speaker this afternoon, so thank you. My name is Milcho. I am a television and music video director as well as a video artist and photographer. I'm from El Salvador and I've been living in Miami Beach since 1987. So let me just get this out of the way. So for all of you who is wondering why is that woman bald, right? Let me get that out of the way before my speech. I am a trichotillomaniac, which means that I pull out my hair. You know what that means? Because I see a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I pull out my hair, and it's a condition that a lot of people have, but they don't talk about it. So I tend to use this as much as I can, a platform to inform people, because there's always somebody in the audience who secretly pulls. So if there's one around, you're welcome to talk to me later. Okay. So the following story, I'd love for you guys to just use your imagination and add a little bit of hair pulling to that with some funky hairdos, and eventually baldness, which is now. I've been bald for 5 years after pulling for 27 years. Now that we have that out of the way, I'm especially thrilled for being here in Tennessee because I spent most of my significant childhood years and my teenage years living in a little town called Helenwood, about an hour north of Knoxville. And I was living with my aunt, who's here today, and my cousins and my uncle. Because of the Civil War in El Salvador in the 1980s, I was forced to leave El Salvador, leave my mother, and go live with my other family. And I would definitely like to do a little shout out to my aunt, who has been an excellent example for me to, as a fearless, hardworking, self-employed business Latina in Knoxville, and she's sitting right over there. And I totally freaked her out because she was not expecting it. So I remember being a freshman in high school in Scott High, and they used to, the teachers used to borrow me and do some show and tell in other classes. So they would pull me out of class, and they would put me in front of all these other different classes, and they would be like, so this is what a Spanish person looks like, okay? So, and then they would make me speak Spanish. I would speak Spanish, and I'm sure that I sounded like an ACD song played backwards in slow motion. And I felt like I was in an X-File episode. So I would look at them as they were looking at me, like a deer in the headlights. Because at that time, the chances of seeing a Latino on the street were just, you had more chances of seeing the Haley comet than seeing a Latino. So that was me, and that was my aunt and my cousins who were 50-50. There's some gringos in there. There's a little bit of gringo blood in there, Latino blood as well. So we fast forward a few years after that, and I find myself reuniting with my family back in Miami, where true Americans were as rare as I was in Tennessee. Miami is an eclectic cocktail of different Latin American accents, cultural flavors, cultural differences, lingos, and gestures. That's when I realized that not all Latin Americans were the same. Everyone spoke my language, and I had no idea what they were saying. I did not like Miami. Cubans were loud. Any Cubans here? Let me start again. Cubans were loud and scandalous. I could not understand Colombia's. Sorry. Venezuelans confused me. Argentinians stressed me out. And Brazilians just added more chaos onto my already chaotic teenage years. So the Da Vinci Code was easier to decipher. Man, I've been trying to learn that word since I wrote it. Decipher than all those Latin Americans put together in Miami. Nonetheless, with time, patience, and learning not to take absolutely everything personal, I learned to love Miami, and that's where my heart stands today. I love Miami. So, in 1991, my mother, with all the best intentions in the world and all the love, she bought me a video camera for my graduation. So when I opened the box and I saw what was in it, I was not happy. I was not happy. I did not want a camera for my graduation. And let me explain to you why. 2 years prior to that, my mom's younger brother, my Uncle Balthazar, had passed away from AIDS at age 39. He was a very well-respected cinematographer, filmmaker, and a television director in El Salvador. Once he passed away, I inherited all his cameras, which I did not dare touch, because that was him. That was his extension of who he was. He was my mentor, the perfect man in my eyes, and the reason why I chased fire trucks down the street. He inspired me to live fun, live creative, live curiously, and live exciting. So when I saw the camera that my mom was giving me, I knew exactly what she was up to. I was quietly upset because I had no business holding a camera. Camera symbolized who my uncle was and not who I was. I felt like she was trying to keep him alive through me, against my will. Regardless of the rejection I had towards that gift, I did pack it with me and I took it to my graduation protesting quietly. Can I have my water, please?
We rehearsed this, thank you.
Thank you. There you go. So I shot my graduation that day as if I was sinking in a ship trying to save my life. But sooner than later, the footage became more bearable to watch. But little did I know that was going to be the Kickstarter of what would become my career, my obsession, my passion, and my life. All thanks to my mother and her hopes that I would pick up what my uncle had put down. Thanks, Mom. Shortly after that, I began volunteering for the People with AIDS Coalition. So that took me to the most amazing, flamboyant gay parties in the world, taking place in South Beach, in Miami Beach. That's a whole different story. Later. So, Miami Beach in the early 1990s was the French Riviera of America. Everything was happening there. hot and trendy clubs were opening. High-end photography was coming in, fashion photography was coming in from Europe and all over the world because of the weather. And in every corner, you had music videos, television shows, and big Hollywood movies being shot. And there I was, in the middle of that, with my little camera. I began knocking on the doors of all the venues that were popular at the time, and I did offering my services as a videographer. So I would, knock on the door and be like, "Hey, my name is so and so. I'll shoot your party for $150, and then you'll get back a 20-minute video with a bunch of really cool music and effects and this, that, and the other." And I got hired, boy. I was like this, and within the first 2 years of that, I was working 7 days a week. In parallel to doing all the parties and stuff like that, I was shooting also the behind the scenes of big music videos, as well as the behind the scenes and the making of big photo shoots in Miami and New York, so that was really cool. I was a 21-year-old suburban girl, Spanish girl, with long, beautiful hair, if you can imagine that. And as a Latina, wearing high heels and shooting in a scene where I had no competition. It was unusual to see a man on the street back then with a camera unless they were shooting the news, and there was definitely no other chick in the neighborhood with a camera. So once again, I was Haley's Comet, and I loved it. I always felt that being Spanish and a girl with a video camera was empowering. And just all around cool. It was like my perfect accessory. And because I was so much younger than everybody else around me, I felt like I had to prove myself and exaggerate my sense of professionalism and responsibility. So I was never on time. I was always hours early. In a business where everybody was super late and sometimes didn't even show up. But it didn't matter to me because I had to build my street credit on my own. So I knew what was right, and that's where I was going. I wasn't drinking. Even though I was surrounded by party, I never did drugs. I never drank any alcohol, and I was super, super focused. But then we go up to 1994 when MTV Latino opened in Miami Beach. I got hired as a production assistant. That was my first legit industry job, because everything until that time I had taught myself out of manuals from the equipment that I was buying, books, asking people, and just pure instinct. And then suddenly I was part of the biggest and the most popular music television network in the world. I remember that once that project was over, and they let me go, I remember thinking that I was probably fired because I was way too happy in the halls. And I still think that sometimes. The following years after that, I dedicated myself to learning as much as I could from people who knew more than I did. That was my idea of putting myself through school. Eventually, my organization skills and my people skills got me hired to produce all my friends who were directors, all their big jobs, all their commercials, and all their music videos all over the US and Central America. I even got to produce the background images of Britney Spears' Oops, I Did It Again, background images for her world tour. And even though all that sounded super exciting and definitely priceless, I was not happy because I'm not a producer. I know it sounds really, really big, the word, but I'm not a producer. I'm not numbers, I'm creative, I'm a director, and I'm a cameraman, camera operator. It's funny because when I first started, everybody was a cameraman. You wouldn't say camera woman, it was a cameraman. And I grew up calling myself a cameraman. And then eventually, the more camera women began doing camera work, then people started calling women camera women. And now it's just kind of like camera operator. So that's like, there's no, it's, there's ni mujer ni hombre, es una cosa de las dos cosas, you know. So then we go to in 2001. I received a phone call, which was my super big break. I received a phone call from Madonna's label, the Latin division of Madonna's label, which was also in Miami Beach, that they were looking for treatments for music videos. I knew the president of the company because I'd worked with him in MTV years before, and he knew that I was that director that was ready to shoot anything at any time, and I'll do it the me kind of director, right? So they gave me the opportunity, and then when I see who I was competing with the, you know, bidding against the biggest, most popular, most badass male directors in the business, which happened to be all my friends. But I didn't care. I was like, this is my break, I'm doing it. So I remember sitting, and the video was for an artist out of Chile who was looking for treatment. So ultimately it was her decision to pick the director. So, you know, the people that I was running against, these directors, had on the reel Janet Jackson, Madonna, Whitney Houston, Chayanne, Thalia, anybody who was anybody at that time on TV and on MTV had these directors do their music videos. And my reel was full of artsy little videos that nobody understood. It's funny because I have stuck to that to that style since then, and because I couldn't give in to what everybody else was doing. I was, you don't get it, but I get it, and that's enough, you know. So now it's paying off, and it's kind of cute to see, you know. So that I didn't care that my competition was so intense. And I remember I sat at Starbucks for hours and dove into an induced creative pool of ideas and wrote a treatment. So to my surprise, I got the gig. And let me just sit there and feel that moment again. I remember I was driving and I got the call. I had to pull over and I was going, I was like, are you sure? Are you sure? You know, and I'm sure that my opponents felt the same. They must have been like, Milcho and her little reel, really? Yes. And that little video that I did was actually nominated that year for an MTV Video Music Award Latino, which was insane because my first big break and it was nominated, so that was really hot. What wasn't so hot was what happened after that. Because with the nomination, I was convinced that all the doors in the industry were going to open for me, even the gates of heaven, man. I was like, this is all mine, and it's happening. Oh my God, I got 4 minutes. So then that time I actually got, the only door that really opened was the darkest time of my career because the phone really didn't ring at all. And I couldn't understand because in my head I had done absolutely everything right, and it didn't make sense that it was not happening for me. So I sat there for about a year in my sofa, pulling out my hair, trying to figure this out, and then one day I clicked. And I realized that I was much more than a director, music video director. I realized that I was also I could be a television director, an artist, a photographer, a poet, that I was an all-around creative human being, and for that, there was no box big enough for me. So the moment that I clicked, everything changed. All the doors started opening for me. I was, directing my own show for Pepsi Music in Puerto Rico. I started a film festival, which is right now very big as well, internationally, the Miami Short Film Festival. I was casted for a reality show on the Travel Channel, and I had never been in front of the camera. Next thing I know, I was on TV twice a week. So all of that, because I realized that I had put myself I had to handicap myself with expectations. And just sitting there and just expecting one thing when I can be so much more than that. So the minute that I divorced myself from expectations, I realized that I was pretty much unstoppable. From that experience, I ended up with a phrase which I have tattooed in my arm, which is, si no te gusta, recuadra. So if you don't like it, reframe, which means if you don't like it, change it, look somewhere else, move forward. In the last decade, I've been fortunate enough to have worked with many big networks. And a lot of times making, fake it till you make it kind of thing, saying, oh yeah, sure, I know how to use that camera, and then just have, reading on it, and then actually being able to do what I have to do. But I started a great relationship with MTV Networks, and I began directing episodes for a little show called My Super Sweet 16. Have you guys ever seen that? A bunch of docu-reality episodes for True Life, some other MTV specials. And then I was recruited to work in Miami with MTV3, where I directed Quiero mis 15, Quiero mi boda, Quiero my baby, which have all been nominated for different awards, and it's been really great. So I've had the opportunity through the years also to work with some pretty badass female camera operators and directors. We're not that unusual anymore. We're many, and we come in peace. The fun thing is that no matter how often we've been, doing this, or me, there's always somebody in the room that runs up to me, or another female operator, camera operator, they're like, oh my God, you're a chick with the camera. And I'm like, yeah, where have you been, Because even though it's unusual, oh my gosh, she's coming up the stage. I can see you from the corner of my eye. I never ever felt self-conscious about being a woman, and definitely not for being a Latina. That has never been my excuse for any of my failures, nor the way I had programmed myself to think. The first time I heard a woman in the industry tell me, thank you. The first time I heard a woman in the industry complain about not getting jobs or having a difficult time because it was a man's world, I couldn't understand it. Because I always felt it was my world. Even though I do recognize when I have worked with men who have a hard time telling them what to do, but then I also have bumped into women who have that same issue. But at the end of the day, it's their problem, it's not mine, In the contrary, I feel that the result of the two ingredients of being a woman and being Latina is a kick-ass, fierce, superhuman, magical combination. And who knows, maybe I didn't get some jobs at some point because I was a woman or Latina. But I was too busy being naive, gotta admit that, too busy daydreaming, or too involved in orchestrating my next epic, self-motivating, creative move. Lucky me. A friend's mother told me once, when I was preparing for my TED Talk a couple years ago, she said, be excellent. And I liked how that sounded. So today I say to you, be excellent. But don't only be an excellent Latina. Be an all-around, badass, fearless, excellent human being.